In the early years of our marriage, if we'd heard about couples that were separating or so on, you'd think, oh, what a real shame, and I wonder what they didn't do right. And then as we had that sort of experience of disconnection and lack of contact, I could understand. I could say, yep, I can see why you might want to do that.
Hello, my name's Grace. I grew up in the UK in a Christian family, and I grew up on a farm. My dreams were not really actually to have a big family and get married. I wanted to live in the country, and I was looking forward to a life of good things and adventure and enjoyment. I grew up in an Anglican family, and I was one of 4 children, and they didn't make us go to church with them, but as the 3rd out of the 4, we were allowed to go with them if we wanted to, and I chose to go with my mum because it was my one bit of one-on-one time with my mum, going to church on a Sunday.
I am Brendan. I'm married to Grace. We've been married now for 17 years. I grew up in different parts of Australia. We moved around a lot as a child, so I got used to having to make new friends and fit in with into different situations. We always had a strong connection with Europe because my mother is German, and so we kept a strong connection there, which meant that when I finished year 12, I wanted to go travelling in Europe and see, a bit more of the world and my family connections there. And it was while we were travelling that I met Grace, the woman who's now my wife.
We met on a little island off Scotland, and we had a sort of a very quick kind of getting to know each other time, and we were sort of young and quite poor together. We were always going camping and hiking and things like that, and I think I chose Brendan just because I wanted to spend my life with this guy. I didn't want to be somewhere else. I wanted to be with him.
I was very excited to get married to Grace. I felt like I've scooped the pool. I've got someone that's beautiful and fun woman. When I met Grace, she had her hair was all wild in beads and wire and so on, and she wore crazy jewellery, and we had a lot of adventures in her as we got to know each other.
Brendan was already discerning whether to become a Catholic before we got married, but his priest very wisely said that you've got one big commitment coming up, that Brendan was getting married to me. We actually got married in the UK because a lot of my family is over there, and we got married in an Anglican church because in those days neither of us was Catholic. So, and then we both converted a few years into our marriage to Catholicism. When we first got married, I remember lots of people had said to us, "Oh, marriage is hard work, you just got to stick it out and you've got to know how to argue and all these sorts of things." And when we first got married, I thought, this is really nice. This is great. Like it's much nicer than we expected it to be, much more enjoyable. I think that was the first little while, and it stayed enjoyable, but you did start to notice that things became a bit more difficult. particularly because when I first came out to Australia, I wasn't allowed to work, and so we were surviving on Brendan's student income, and I think that brought stresses into the marriage. You know, just being a bit short of money and not having a car and all those sorts of things. And I think also because we are away from my family, so I had to learn how to sort of deal with Brendan's family, who I now love very much. But they took some getting used to. They're just different cultural ways of doing things.
Very quickly had our first child, and so straight away you're into learning all those new things as a parent and as a father. You know, we managed to buy a house, and my work was going really well, and we ended up working abroad for a few years, moving abroad for my work, which again was I found very rewarding, and it was quite an adventure as a family. A little while after we came back from overseas, back to Australia, you know, we'd been married then for around 10 years, and that's when, you know, I think we just started to notice that some of that initial you know, the romance and some of the excitement was you know, dying off, and you know, that we were feeling a little bit disillusioned.
Part of that was because we've been very busy with 3 and then 4. So we had a baby at 10 years in, so we had 4 small children. And I think one of the things that I was doing without realising it was that I think I was prioritising my time with the children over my time with Brendan.
I remember coming home and you know, I wouldn't be welcomed when I walked in the door. You know, there'd be all sorts of things going on with the children, and you know, I might have to make my own way to the kitchen and heat up my own dinner and all of, you know, while the life of the household went on, and I was, you know, maybe almost more a nuisance than you know, and that sort of experience contributed to that sense of withdrawal or isolation, and wanting to spend, you know, more time at work where people seem to enjoy being with me. We would have periods in our marriage where it was, you know, like quite cold physically, and we'd go to bed and we'd lie very carefully on opposite sides of the bed with the, you know, the maximum possible space between us, and you know, there wouldn't be eye contact when we were talking together, and it was all very surface, you know, all right, what's happening tomorrow, what do we need to do, and no emotional connection or intimacy.
I sort of started to realise that this is where we're at now. It's not, we're not like, you know, joyful newlyweds anymore. We're actually living inside a marriage and not really feeling like we know the other person or that we're enjoying it very much anymore.
A lot of the excitement and feeling that we were special was gone, and you know, like we you know, began to lose a lot of that closeness in our marriage. And I remember Grace would go out to these church prayer groups, and she would come back looking really alive, and you know, she'd had these, you know, special times, and her faith was really growing and blossoming, and that was all separate to me.
I remember it started to sort of affect my faith, because I started thinking, look, God, I'm trying all these different things. I'm you know, I committed and like full to this marriage, and you know, I really want to make a go of it, and I'm trying everything I can think of, but it felt like God wasn't really turning up, you know, sort of playing his part in our covenant of marriage, you know, and I really started to sort of doubt, you know, maybe we didn't have this call to be together. And I think I started to turn to sort of other things for my sort of social enjoyment, times with other people. So I got actually very involved in various church groups, so prayer groups and things like that.
I felt in my faith like he was Grace, and her relationship with Jesus was growing and flourishing, and mine was just the same.
And I remember one time, I think it must have been another anniversary, and he took me out for a very nice meal at an expensive restaurant. And which, again, we're doing all the right things, we're trying to make this thing work, and yet I just remember sitting there in the meal, and when you can't think of anything to talk about, you're just sort of making polite conversation. And I thought, what's happened? We used to be, really enjoy each other's company, and now here we are making polite conversation about the food. And I remember on the way home in the car, sitting there in the dark, it's always easier to talk in the dark, saying to him, trying to describe what I felt like. And I described it like, so when I was younger in the UK, I used to be part of a rowing club. And right towards the end of a race, when you really feel like you've got nothing left to give and you're just exhausted, the coach shouts at you, you've got to keep up the pace. You got to, what do they call it, stride. You got to stride. And it was always the awful thing. You hated hearing it because it was such hard work to just keep going when you felt like there was nothing, you had no more energy. And I said to Brendan, that's what I feel like in this marriage. Like, I'm happy to persevere, but I just feel like I'm having to push forward and I've got nothing left to give, And it was, really good to hear that Brendan kind of could understand what I was saying. But again, nothing came from that conversation. That was just, okay, we both feel the same.
We were in this situation where both of us, felt that there was something lacking, that our marriage wasn't what we hoped it would be, so we kept trying different things, and I know one thing that was really important for me was just to keep praying not to be put to the test, so that when you're in good moments and in a good connection with Jesus, to use that to sort of bind your behaviour and your choices, even in moments when you maybe didn't feel that way. So that was one thing that was really important for me. And there was other changes. In the end, I actually changed my place of work. So I thought it was important to move jobs somewhere that was closer to home, so that I would have less time away, less time traveling, but also a chance to be with a different group of people at work, all part of our efforts to try and reset and focus on our marriage.
I'd done a lot of research on reading books about marriage and things like that, really trying to find some kind of solutions and things to try, and had tried a lot of things and nothing really seemed to be working. And then my mother-in-law, Brendan's mum, suggested we went on a marriage encounter weekend, which she'd been on when she was younger. And at first I thought, well, look, we've done it all. I know all the theory, it's just not working, and there's no point. But then I thought, well, we should give this a try. It's recommended, and we should try everything that is out there. And so I sort of overcame that initial not wanting to go out and spend a whole weekend away, and we did go on a weekend, but it took us 2 years to get there, because we decided, yes, we'd try it, and then just babysitting and all these other things got in the way. It was really difficult, but we did get there 2 years later, and that was a really good thing to have, a time that was a sort of separate time from the family, where we could we had the space to open up to each other.
We came away from that weekend with some good tools. I felt more able to you know, like rather than just withdraw and, you know, deal with these things that I found painful or uncomfortable, that I had ways now to open that up and share that with Grace, and that experience, you know, did bring us closer together. It wasn't an overnight thing, you know, like we came back from our weekend, and we had a pretty you know, tough day, you know, maybe just readjusting to normal family life, but we were thinking, oh, maybe that was all just a dream for a weekend, and now the rude reality is back. But you know, that we were able to stick with some of the things that we'd learnt on the weekend, and yeah, grow our intimacy and connection over time.
We've been doing lots of things for each other. We've been doing things for each other, but we hadn't really been listening to each other. And that, for me, was one of the big changes, was that after we'd had that experience, it moved from doing things to each other to actually like becoming closer.
I think another sort of really concrete way that changed is the way that we pray together as a couple. I think I'd always had a sense that sort of real prayer was the time I had alone with God, and that time with other people was, you know, useful and good, but it was a sort of the entree before the real prayer, and to have that rediscovery of our vocation as a married couple together, and the fact that, you know, God is not in competition with Grace for my time, and that we can spend time together as a couple in prayer. One of the things that we learned on our weekend was that, you know, like, it's quite easy to say I'm sorry, and, you know, I think we were pretty good at saying I'm sorry when we did, you know, when we hurt each other, but then to go further and say, look, you know, like, will you forgive me? Because there's a risk there, you know, like if I say sorry, I'm still in control, and I'm just saying sorry, and I've done my bit, and I'm feeling much better about myself. But when you go and ask, well, you know, can you forgive me? You know, you're making yourself vulnerable. The other person, you know, doesn't have to say yes, or might say, well, you know, it's going to take me a while. So there's that additional step of being open to each other, and being vulnerable, and asking for forgiveness rather than staying in control and just apologising.
For times when, you know, you do end up having things aren't going so well, like you know, you're having an argument, or you can't decide on something, or you're just feeling grumpy for some reason. Or now we've got a bit of sort of time behind us of times when we have got through those situations, that you can you can look back and, you know, this is okay, we've done this before, we're going to get through this. This is not the end of anything. This is just, you know, here's another one. We'll just get through this one, and we'll just keep going. It's really nice to have that kind of history of different times when you've managed to make it through.
The overall picture is we're still in fairyland, and we're you know, we're working and building our love. We're separately involved in different things, but to look at things that we could do together as a couple, so that we, you know, like, even just as a little way of spending more time together rather than running and passing the baton to each other out as we pass like ships in the night. So we are involved with Marriage Encounter that we got so much out of, and other ministry to newly married couples in our diocese.
One of my favourite Bible verses is, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." And different years, different bits of it are important for me. And as far as marriage is concerned, I think the joy bit is really important, that we can lose sight that it's meant to be, there's meant to be joy in our lives. It's not all drudgery and perseverance and hard work, you know. And that's where, you know, God is actually strong in that. That's not just a sort of our little fun bit on the side. That's actually that's one of the ways in which God works in our lives is our enjoyment of our time together.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful prayer in one of the books we know that says, may your striving for the kingdom not fall short through selfishness or fear. May the universe be alive with the Spirit, and your homes be the pledge of a world redeemed.
Are you searching for answers? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.